Let's have a planner agent talk to a research agent, talk to a writer agent. It sounds sophisticated. It's usually a mistake. Reaching for multiple agents too early is the single most common architecture error in agent engineering. So let's get the topologies right and the harder discipline that goes with them. There are 4 shapes and they climb in power and in pain. Start at the bottom. Single agent, one good prompt, a few solid tools. It's the cheapest, the fastest, and by far the easiest to debug, and it handles the large majority of tasks. Start here. Supervisor, sometimes called orchestrator workers, a central agent decomposes the task, delegates the pieces to worker agents, then synthesizes their results. This is roughly 70% of production multi-agent systems because it maps so cleanly onto split this into independent pieces. Swarm, pair agents that hand off control to each other, any agent to any other. Flexible, powerful, but the routing is emergent and the traces are brutal to follow. That's the frontier, not the default. And hierarchical, supervisors of supervisors for very large task trees. The most power and the most overhead and complexity. Now the question that actually matters, when does multi-agent genuinely earn its cost? The honest criterion is one phrase: context isolation. Multi-agent pays off when subtasks genuinely need separate context windows. 3 real examples. Parallel research threads, where 3 workers each explore a different source in their own context. Then a supervisor merges short summaries. A long code base, split across workers so no single context window has to hold the whole thing. And genuinely independent subtasks that can run at the same time for speed. Notice the pattern. In every case, there's a concrete reason the work cannot share one context window. So here's the test, and it's ruthless. If you can't name which isolated context window each agent needs and why it must be separate, you don't need multi-agent. Because every extra agent is a real bill. More LLM calls, which means more latency and more cost, more places to fail, and a much harder debugging and evaluation story. Non-deterministic handoffs are genuinely hard to trace and test. Make multi-agent justify all 3: the latency, the cost, and the failure modes. And this is exactly why the teams who started with elaborate swarms are largely the ones now rewriting them as routing plus one capable agent. But say context isolation really does apply. Then there's a production shape that gives you most of the benefit without the chaos. Look at the code. A supervisor with focused workers, each on its own isolated context. The key move is the last line. Each worker returns a short, structured summary, not its entire transcript, just the distilled result. That one discipline keeps the supervisor's context lean, so the orchestrator stays the single place you log, inspect, and reason about. And that's the whole lesson in one breath. Single agent first, supervisor when you can name the isolated contexts. Swarm only at the frontier with eyes open. Because the goal was never to look sophisticated. It was to ship something you can actually debug at to in the morning.